was no one to talk to. There was no internet. There was no uh, anyone. You would never hear of any of these sorts of things. So, when Syann and I, when we work across Reddit and a few other places, Discord, and we get a lot of people contacting us that are trying to work out what's going on, because this is actually not a simple thing to work out. It goes all the way through from astral contact through to the phenomenon, which is associated with many extraterrestrials. There's also spirit people, so we're fully trained mediums as well. We work doing mediumship. Plus, you get a lot of people that are astraling into your space as well. And so when we start to look at the, all of the different things, all the different parts to somebody's experience, it may not just be extraterrestrials. It can be a lot of other things that are taking place. So we spend a lot of time with people, helping them sort through that stuff. Well, for me, it started when I was basically a child in a crib. I would have these beings walking around. I mean, I didn't know they were beings. I had no idea what they were. I don't think I even cared. But then when I was about 5, I realised that I could astral travel and just roll out of my body, walk around. I was taken on craft as well, and I thought that it was normal that people would go on craft. Because it was happening all the time. Remember, because there was no internet, I don't know where I got the words from, but I was talking to my mother about these beings, these aliens, these this, these that. And she had no idea what I was talking about. And all I knew is that I'd wake up outside of my house at night in the front yard. I probably have just been dropped off from a craft or something. So, like a lot of other people, it was all pretty strange when I was young. Scoop marks, those sorts of things. And then for a while, I went really quiet, probably for about 15, 20 years. But then what took place was one day I was standing in a kitchen in Melbourne with a friend of mine, and we were up on the 3rd floor of a set of units. We were looking out the window, and a craft came. It was a Tic Tac, and it just sat there, and the sides went clear, the front of the craft went clear, and there were 2 Zeta Greys standing in there. They were about 10 metres away. So I said to my mate, "Hey, can you see that?" Because you don't know. And he goes, "Yeah, I can see that." And we could see past it, and there was a main road in Melbourne, and there was cars going up and down, and we saw this vehicle coming up really fast, sort of swerving, and they came into where we were. They were our friends, and they came up and were pounding on the door. They came in and they go, "There's a craft or something outside." And I said, "Well, here, look at it from here." And they went up to the window, and they could see the beings in the craft as well. So now there's 4 of us watching this craft, broad daylight. I'm sure that a lot of other people probably saw it as well, but nobody would ever report that back then. Who would you ring? There's nobody that you would ring, because it wasn't common knowledge. It wasn't a discussion. There was no social media, no one to talk to, those things. Then sort of it all went a bit quiet for about 10 years. And then one morning I woke up. I must have been going on to craft, but I didn't realise I was back then. But I walked out into the kitchen. It was dark. I was on my way to work. I used to shovel concrete. And it was pretty hard yakka. And I walked out and went to turn the light switch on, and I heard this shuffling noise. And I looked, and I thought it was a demon, but it was little grey extraterrestrial. Jumped up on my left arm. I'm trying to get it off. I think I'm being attacked by a possum or something, And next thing I look over and I hear this other noise, and one comes at me from my right-hand side. So now I've got them on my arm, so I'm fighting them off. I'm going pretty well, but they're strong. And then just when I thought I had them, the third one jumped on me, straight at me, And I went down, the three of us, all, well, the four of us went down like a ton of bricks, and I blacked out. And I woke up, I was back in bed, and I thought, shit, what sort of a dream was that? That was crazy. And I got up and turned the light on, and I was dressed, and my shirt was on backwards. So I realised that I'd got up and that I'd had contact. And, for a lot of people, that's probably where, their contact probably begins and ends. They have those sorts of experiences, and it never goes much further than that. And for me, I sort of didn't want it to go any further. It was all too terrifying. Then I started seeing these spirits walking around, people that had passed over, and I realised that, this wasn't right. So I've had all those little, beings running around at some point. Now I've got these people that are dead walking around the house, and I sort of didn't want to talk to anybody about it. And I found out, though, these days it's a pretty common phenomenon when you've got extraterrestrial contact, that the phenomenon allows the spirit people to come as well. And so when I was about 40, I decided to, I was going to look into this. So I was really going to commit myself to looking into it. And I started to sit and meditate and do what's mental mediumship. And the beings started to come through. Now, where I'm sitting now was a place that I held a circle for mediums. And for the first 9 months that we sat, nothing happened. And then one day I sitting means to go into trance states, and had everybody sort of sitting in the room. And next thing, they said that they were seeing an extraterrestrial sitting in the chair over the top, like a transfiguration process, which isn't uncommon these days for mediums at all. And so they started talking through me, and I thought, well, yeah, okay, whatever. That doesn't make any sense that they're doing that. And so I thought, well, I'll call these beings out, and if they're all just full of crap, then it's just me making it up. That's what I thought. So I said to one of the people, when they come through, here's a list of questions. And so the person asked them some questions and said, listen, can you bring a craft? They said, yeah, okay, we will. And we thought, oh, okay, this will be interesting. When the person said, when would you like to bring the craft? I said, well, we'll bring it in 2 weeks' time. And so I organised a landing spot, and the craft, I had 20 people there waiting, and the craft landed, and the greys came out, and they walked around everybody. And that was when I realised that I had something else was going on. I know people might go, it's a bit strange to think you've got something else going on, but when you've got those beings talking through you and then they come in a craft, you've got to ask yourself, well, what's really going on here? So I then started, looking into this a lot further, and then I said to them, well, if you're going to annoy me, if you're going to be around me, then what is it that you can actually do? And they said, well, we'd like to try and heal some people. And so I started asking people if anyone wanted to be healed. And we've got a lot of testimonial evidence on our website, the zetaconnection.com. And the Zeta started giving people healings. And sort of for us, it was more about, everyone's always talking about alien invasion and all these sorts of things. And we were just sitting in the background working quietly with the Zetas, and they were sort of healing people and doing lots of other stuff for people. And in the end, there's a million times that they've come, and sometimes we've got an audio recording of the craft coming down to the house, and anybody could have heard that craft when the craft came down. It was making not a lot of noise, but it was using some sort of a sonar noise to navigate down to the roof of the house. And we were told before the craft was coming that they were coming, and they told us to actually turn the recorder on, the audio recorder, and we did. Some people go, why didn't you run outside with a camera? Because every time we try and film them, everything breaks.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to even function properly when you've got,
yeah,
when they're that low, you I mean, I was fully conscious, but I was struggling not to black out.
Yeah.
You know, like,
This is what people don't realise is that
yeah.
when they're around, you're in an altered state. It's an altered reality. And, the last thing that you'll be thinking about is grabbing your iPhone and turning it on. It's different if the craft's a long way away and, you've got your phone on, you're going to take some pictures of this little light orb. But when the craft comes down, I don't know if you know, but Gary Nolan, he's been doing some research with the military, and any of the pilots that have gone close to craft, once they've done an MRI scan of the pilots, a lot of them have this physical changes to their structure of their brains, and we know ourselves from our own contact that you can get burnt when you go near these craft. You can, and when they come into the house, you can also get burnt as well. So, look, obviously there's a lot more to the story. I had a scientist contact me, William Treneat, and he was a retired government scientist in communication. He wanted to ask some questions, so he flew across from Canada and sat and spoke to the Zetas through me, and he wrote a book called A Primer of the Zeta Race, and we give that book away for free. And then a lot of the transcripts of the Zetas speaking through me was then condensed into a book of about 600-700 pages, and that's called the Zeta Interviews. And so we've got about 8 to 10 books out at the moment. Some deal with extraterrestrial technology. At least 4 of them are free, so we like to give a lot of stuff away to people. We try and teach people as much as we can because there is so much free information out there. Thousands of pages. People can learn about contact themselves so that they can somehow try and work through some of the stuff they do. But Syann and I spend a lot of time working with people individually as well. We listen to their stories and sort of always come to some sort of resolution in regards to what's gone on, because we've had so much contact ourselves. We ended up working out what all of the different types of screen memories that the different extraterrestrial races use. We've also, because we've got some evidence that race, the Zetas, we're able to then meet some other races as well. So it's worked out quite well, I think.
I think so.
And what about you?
What about me?
What about you, eh?
Yeah, I guess my experiences have been different in many ways to yours, but we've ended up at the same place. So I didn't have the overt contact that you had. I had a watered down version, in the sense that they were obfuscating their real appearance from me every time. And so they use many different types of screen memories when they come, especially with children, because they don't want to scare them. They really don't. And so I would see, I mean, it sounds really silly, I'd see 7-foot tall Easter bunnies when I was 3 years old in my house, in the middle of the night.
That's a strange perception.
Yeah. And, the common ones are owls. You hear a lot of people saying they see owls. In America, they see, a lot of people report seeing Bigfoot or Yeti, Sasquatch. It depends where you are. When I look back on why they chose the imagery that they did, it all makes sense. And, that's a story in itself. But so I've had a lot of covert memories, but which as a child you don't really think anything about at all. But then as an adult, you look back and you go, yeah, it really wasn't normal to be up at middle of the night when you're that young, with your lounge room, for all intents and purposes, full of 6-7 foot rabbits, but that's really not normal. But as a child, that, of course, you're in a slightly altered state. It's not a scary thing for you, and of course it's imagery that you'll accept, and the Zetas very much will try to use imagery from a person's mind that they'll accept. I've had multiple conscious craft experiences where they've been carrying out procedures where as an adult they haven't hidden the way that they really appear. And so I much prefer that. So at least I know who I'm with. But But some of the experiences have been, beyond terrifying when you don't understand what's going on, and this is where a lot of people are that we speak with. They really does feel like alien abduction in the truest sense of the word. They're not realizing what's actually going on there, and I'm not as old as you, but it's still taken me, my 45 years to come to terms with it, to fully understand it, work through it, and now when they're around, that fear is no longer present. It's been it's a tough journey. It's
Always,
a tough journey.
Absolutely.
It would be, because like you said, people don't understand what's happening around them. The whole experience is very terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
But how do you sort of like go on the fact here, like a lot of the abductions, they're random. You have no idea when or where this thing's going to happen. Like, how does that sort of come across with the approach of the Zetas and this sort of aspect of things? Like, I don't know if it's like the Zetas that are doing that, or if it might be a different race that sort of go.
So basically, there's a structure to races, and if you understand what some of the structures of the races are, then you can understand what's going on and why it's going on. So firstly, there's the Greys. There's 63 races, and 62 of those races are in service to others. The ones that abduct people, and we'll get into abduction in a minute, but the ones that abduct people, they do so against people's free will, and they're not part of the what's called the collective consciousness of the Zeta race. And so I've had encounters with the abductor Greys. It was very unpleasant, but that's fine. It's a good experience. The Zetas have told us that a lot of the people that are contacted or abducted, they think it's abduction, but it actually works out to be contact. They are part of different races, and we have to understand something. We all came from somewhere. You don't just turn up here on planet and then that's it, it's all over. So you were somewhere before you were born. You came in here and became a human. And then, of course, after you finished your human journey, you transition back to your point of origin. And so when we understand that everybody has a point of origin and it can be based around extraterrestrial nature, then we're looking at a planet full of hybrids. There's no shock here that people are actually contacted by their own races. But the difference is that when they're contacted by their races, because they no longer remember the narrative about who they are and what they are outside of the physical form, they then are terrified because all they can see is these big-headed, black-eyed entities coming into their house, and not sort of realizing that they could actually be part of that race. And when we look at it, a lot of people that are being abducted, when we talk to them and say to them, well, would you like it to stop? They actually say no.
Yeah. Were you actually harmed? No. And quite often we find out that they seem to have been miraculously healed of an ongoing condition that doctors couldn't sort out for them.
And that's interesting because we were contacted by the international director of MUFON many years ago, Kathleen Martin. I'm not sure if you've heard of her. And she wanted healing. And so I went into and spoke to the Zetas, and they said that they would heal her. And they did. And she was healed within 3 days on craft of a physical illness that she couldn't be healed of. She's actually given video testimony on our YouTube channel, the Zeta Connection, talking about her healing by the Zetas all those years ago. And the difference is with their healings, when they choose to do them, is that the healing sticks. It's not something that happens and then fades away. So we've noticed that for the people that have been healed by the Zetas, they're quite happy to give testimonies that they've been healed as well.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Like, who would have thought, like, people living their lives there have the opportunity that, well, given they're the right person, I suppose, in that regard, like to go and be able to be offered healing. That's quite incredible. It's like, so why wouldn't they sort of help the rest of the the world in that sense, like with regards to
That's,
healing?
look, that's a really good question. And the thing is, uh, they basically only want to help their own. So if, let's say that 100% of the people on planet are extraterrestrial, you're an extraterrestrial, or your listeners are extraterrestrial, it could actually be that everybody's being visited, but because the screen memory technology is so good, just about nobody remembers that they're actually being contacted. It's just there's a 30% of the population or less that have the ability to remember that they're being contacted. The other 70% don't know. And so when people go, well, why do the Zetas heal those people? It's because generally that they only heal their own hybrids. We've got other races that we know of, Sirius A, Arcturian, the Anunnaki. These races have evidenced themselves in various ways. A little bit difficult with the interventional races, but that they heal their own as well. And we know people that are of those races that get healed. And I know that a lot of people, sort of look at some of these people on social media, and some of the stuff coming out of their mouth sounds really strange and all the rest of it. I mean, that's their story. I can't disagree with it. But it's more about, well, what evidence does the person have? And Syann and I spend a lot of time with people saying, look, as crazy as the whole thing sounds that's happening to you, you need to start to develop some level of evidence. You need to journal what's going on with you. You need to, if you believe you got taken or you have marks on you or whatever, you need to document that and you need to evidence that. And what happens is you start to build up a pattern of contact, because the problem with contact is it isn't just so clear that you can just say, yes, a person's being contacted. Unless, of course, they're pushed out of a craft or something and land on the front lawn. But you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people, I say to them, you've got an inkling that something's going on. You need to start documenting it, journaling it, taking pictures if you've got bruises. And that way, over the years, and so I had to do this for myself. I had no one to talk to. I had to develop a level of a database that I could look back on and go, okay, look, there's something going on here. Why am I feeling this way? Why is my immune system playing up? What's happened last night? I went to bed feeling great, but I woke up this morning and now I'm unwell. Something's gone on. And, as we've got to understand how they work a lot better, we don't get the screen memories anymore. There's all different levels of screen memories. We've worked out so far there's about, I think it's 5 or 6
that we know about. I'm sure there's plenty.
And once you start to understand how all the screen memories interact with each other, you can start to look underneath them and see what's going on. So,
yeah, fair enough. So I just want to go back to your experiences there, Paul. I've got a few questions here from people here. So Caleb's asking when they first sort of come to you, like, or just in general, I think. Do you think there is a presence? Do you think it's their presence or a technology used by them that causes that feeling? I think there must have been. I'm not sure exactly what I was referring to at the time, but obviously there's something that's occurring there. If it's, I'm not really sure. Hopefully he's still listening.
Is he talking about the feeling of fear?
I'm not sure because I sort of missed it while we're in the moment there when we're talking, so I couldn't really refer to what he was asking to. But I'll jump over to another one. Hopefully he's listening there. He can sort of give us a bit more of an in-depth question there.
Yeah, that's fine.
So now M's asking there, like, when you had the people hearing the sound of the ship there, like, what was the sound like?
None. That was the thing. So when all the people were there, I'll sort of give this more information about that. So I picked a rural property that was 25 acres in New South Wales. I asked about 15 or 20 people to turn up. I told them what was going to happen, and we all sat around a campfire or just around a big fire. So it was a pretty big circle of people. No alcohol, no drugs, no smoking, no this, no that, nothing, right? And everyone was just pretty chilled. I knew most people anyway, everything was good. All of a sudden, because, we're out in a rural area, all of the animals, all the dogs, all start to howl across all of the properties. Lots of howling, and I thought, here we go, something's about to go down.
Dogs always have.
And I looked to the right and I saw this like a cloud rolling in. And as it rolled in about a metre over our heads. And then once it had got past all of us, it descended down to the ground. And I'd said to a lot of people, listen, I don't know how you're going to cope with the craft when it comes. Of course, you've got to understand, people are going, if this guy's crazy, this craft isn't coming. This is going to be the greatest laugh Paul's ever had, So next thing, we look and we see these lights underneath the craft, and they're rotating around. There's no noise, and the craft comes down and leaves a big indentation in the ground. And the ground was actually really thick sand, granular, and if you walked on it, it was crunchy, as you walked. And everyone was had their eyes closed except myself and another person across from me. It was about 8 meters away, and I looked and could see the Zetas, which were about 6.5 feet, walking towards us. We were all in a bit of an altered state. I think we needed to be, or else people would have been a bit terrified. And they walked. One of them walked behind me, and they've got 3 very long fingers. I'm not sure if you've seen the Nazca skeleton. Is that what it's called?
The
Nazca.
big one.
The big skeletons. They got the 3 long fingers. They put them on my shoulders, but they did it to other people as well. They walked right around everybody. It's about 10 of them, I think, that were walking around, and then they went back straight away. We were only there 30 seconds. Went back into the craft. The craft just disappeared. The steam rolled backwards, which was bizarre. And once it had gone, all the animals stopped howling. So
that craft didn't make any sound.
Not one bit of sound.
But
nothing.
The one that came down over the house did.
Yeah.
I think that's the one that M might be referring to. But quickly, like before the craft, though, can you describe the craft a little bit? Like, was it still the cloud sort of look to it, or was it actually like a structure?
That craft behind you on that picture, it looked like that without anything around the outer edge or any you got little windows around the outer edge. There was none of that at all. But the bottom part, the bottom part, it looked exactly like the bottom part of that.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's like, how big do you think the whole craft was roughly?
Oh boy! So we've got pictures of the landing site where it was embedded into the ground.
So the circle, it's left an indentation in the ground, and the grass still
doesn't grow.
Yeah, there's a grass pattern, circular grass pattern still, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years later. I reckon that circle must be.
It's got to be about 8 meters across, isn't it?
I'd say it's more like 10 or 12.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, but that would just be the base. So I don't know what.
It must have been a fairly big craft, yeah.
No,
that's massive. Yes,
5 meters, I reckon, all in.
Yeah, for a 10-meter diameter sort of indent, that's a reasonably decent sized craft.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it had travelled a long way. They actually explained, how they went from where they were to us, how many days it took to travel. They didn't talk about it then when they landed, but just in their conversations after that, when they were asked questions, they were able to clearly answer a lot of those questions as well. I was contacted by a group of scientists. They asked to speak to the Zetas, and this was a few years ago, and I let them talk to the Zetas for 2-3 hour sessions, and these people were pretty interesting. I had to record the conversation, or else I would have never got to have known what was said. But definitely, they had a lot of different questions for the Zetas, and the Zetas were able to answer them as well. So.
No, that's good. Em's gone back to us there. Yes, the one over the house that she's sort of asking how it sounds. So I think it's like you're referring to like a sonar kind of sound. I think that might have been.
A sonic noise. Have you ever a submarine? When they do the sonar noise? The same one, but it had a binaural beat. It was interesting. So on this side of the house, it was a high tone, and on the other side of the house, it was a low tone. We recorded it, and they were using it. They told us because the way craft move is in what's called a decompressed state, the space-time compression. Some people that go onto craft, they see a mist inside the craft. That's to do with the compression that's on the inside of the craft. So when the craft, so let's say you look outside, you see a craft, and then it goes from here to there, and next thing it's there, in there like in a tenth of a second. It actually did travel the whole distance, but the difference is that on a clock, and this is a very rudimentary thing I'm about to say, if 10 seconds passed for you, only 1 second passed for them. So maybe I have that around the wrong way. Yeah. So 1 second passed for you, but 10 seconds passed for them. So they can travel the distance, but for you it's like that.
Yeah, which is why we don't see the craft.
Which is why we can't see the craft. Yeah, I knew I had it around the wrong way.
But when they come out of that decompressed state,
the craft are really unstable. This is the other thing. And so when they were coming down, and we've actually seen a few craft come down, they look a bit wobbly, and people go, "Oh, why? You know, if they're so technologically advanced, why do their craft get all wobbly and stuff?" You know, well, it's to do with the compression. That's what they've told us.
And when they come off the grid.
Oh yeah, and the other way is they're able to move. You know how they're able to move in sort of really sharp, angular patterns. What they've told us is that the craft actually use what's called a toroidal function. And if you read a primer of the Zeta race or whatever, it's explained in there. The other one's called extraterrestrial technology.
Yeah.
The toroidal rides on rails, or is pulled on rails. It creates a gravitational well or something at the front of the craft. And because the rails are all like in a grid, they can go on any rail that they specifically want to. The problem is when they come off the compression, and I can talk about that a bit later, but what happens is they then become very unstable physically. And the reason we know about this stuff is because back in the old days, physical mediums, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of physical mediums, they would use ectoplasm to materialize and dematerialize. You'd get reports coming from spirit people. You'd have a process called matter through matter, where they would bind the medium's wrists, and the spirits would dematerialize the bindings on the medium, and then lift their arm through. And so the extraterrestrials also use that methodology of dematerialization and materialization at all, but without using the whole ectoplasmic process.
Yeah, okay, that's a fairly decent process, the whole thing and the concept in general. So pretty amazing. So Caleb's following it back to me there. He was definitely he's referring to the feeling Syann felt going through the blackout and disoriented in their presence.
Yeah.
So I think the initial question was, do you think it's their presence or a technology used by them that's sort of the cause?
Yeah, it's them. It's their frequency. The Zetas. Humans are. We live on this planet. This planet has a resonance of frequency. We know it's the Schumann frequency or the Schumann resonance. You can look that up. It's 7.83
or something
like
or
that.
8.4.
The Zetas exist on a higher frequency, and it's that frequency that causes, when they're physically present in the room, it's that frequency that causes us to become disorientated and black out, or if they get too close to you, for you to get physically burnt. Your skin has been.
They're three-dimensional beings. So they're three-dimensional beings with a multi-dimensional consciousness, right? So you are as well, by the way. So you're a three-dimensional being, and you've got a higher self, and so you're a multi-dimensional entity. But the difference is that when you walk up to another human, because you're both within the human frequency, you don't black out. Whereas when another being that's of a different vibration, a different nature, comes into your physical space, your local construct, your mind, becomes anesthetized, and you start to lose your ability. People sometimes might say that you're losing your mind. You actually are losing your mind. You're losing the ability to use your mind, and in doing so, a fear is generated. And once that fear is generated, they generally realize that you need to be anesthetized, and people generally black out.
Yeah, so a bit of like a calming agent sort of way to do it, you know.
That's right.
What do you call it? Like, I can't think of it now. Like, you know, you're stopping someone from freaking out and trying to retaliate in a sense, you know.
We call it being anesthetized. So
it's understandable. So just in regards to that, your experience that we had the three little greys there sort of attacking you, like what makes you think that they didn't use that sort of method on you to try and knock you out first?
why did they use that method on me?
No, why didn't they?
Yeah.
anaesthetize
Yeah,
you?
why didn't they use that? So
sorry, sorry, are you asking me why they didn't anaesthetize me?
yeah, instead of like jumping on you and trying to attack you, if I don't know if it's the same race or it might have been a different race. I don't know in that regard.
I think that it was a matter of timing. I think that they were probably going to do that, but because it was dark, they didn't realise. Back then, there was no such thing as office jobs. Everybody worked outside. You got up early and you got dressed and you went out in the dark and you went to work. That was all it was. And so I got dressed in the dark. I didn't turn any lights on. They didn't know I was awake. I knew where my clothes were. I just got dressed and walked out, went to turn the light switch on, and I think they panicked. And then, I never even got to turn the lights on. I just saw them coming at me through the darkness, and it was on.
That would have been terrifying.
Yeah, it was, mate. It was terrifying. Don't you worry about that. But as I say to everybody, I have a bit of a laugh. I thought I had them when I had the two of them. I thought I had them. I was feeling pretty confident. Right up until the third one jumped me, and then I went down screaming.
Yeah, because you don't hear many stories of people actually sort of, I don't know if you want to call it an attack, but it's sort of like a forced abduction in that sort of sense. I know I've heard of people they've woken up halfway through an abduction, where they're sort of going through this building or was being taken through, and that's scary in itself.
Yeah,
but the fact that they're having to forcefully do something is like, Jesus, that would
well, it never happened again. I just want to say to everybody, it never happened again. So I woke up and one of them was standing in the room, and this became quite common. And I said to him, "Okay, no more mucking around. Don't try and take me out. Don't knock me out. I'm not going to sleep. I'm not doing anything." And then two more turned up, and they were over the top of me. And I said, "You're not going to knock me out." And I said, "Don't ever knock me out again." And they sort of agreed that they wouldn't. But they also knew that I would never fight them again either. And that was where they then stopped coming in a way where they would forcefully take me. So I would then say to them, they would come into the room and say, "You need to go out to the craft." I'd say, "No," I'd roll over and go back to sleep. And I'd wake up and I've got one under each arm walking me out to the craft. I'd stop and I'd say, "Listen, I just said I don't want to go out to the craft." They go, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And they'd take me out anyway. But they knew that I wasn't worried. In the end, though, it got to the point where I looked forward to going out onto the craft. You start to think, well, they're going to show me stuff. I'm going to get to see all the symbols. I'm going to get to see inside of the craft. I'm going to get to go up and travel around and see all this stuff. And, your life's so crazy at that point, you may as well enjoy the ride, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, might as well. So it's just good that you're actually you're exposed to them at a young age, and you sort of got to go and get a better understanding of what these beings are. Because if you were obviously today, like myself, someone of an adult age and experiencing this, you'd be thinking that you're going crazy. You start thinking you need to go to a psych ward or something like that. It'd be absolutely scary.
Firstly,
that's where people start questioning it.
If you'd have mentioned this to anybody in the past, that's exactly where you would have gone. That was the first thing. So you didn't, because you knew you couldn't talk about it to anybody, you just kept it to yourself. Then I started to see over the years, where the internet was developed, and you started seeing on bulletin boards, people would generally mention it or something, and everyone would just tell them to get a tinfoil hat. And then the last couple of years, or the last 5 years, more likely, it's become quite common that anybody can just talk about it. But now we've got an issue where we don't know whether it's an astral contact. So an astral is everything around you is astral, right? So every thought that you've ever had, every thought I've ever had, it all exists around us. So when you go to sleep at night, you just shift out of your body and you sit just about 3 or 4 inches above your body in consciousness, and you vibrate at a different level than your physical body. When you do that, you're actually sitting in the astral. Now, some people can lucid dream in the astral, and other people get sleep paralysis in the astral. So their head's in the astral, but I think they're in the physical. And then, of course, the things that exist in the astral are abductions. People have had abductions. And so somebody may actually end up living the abduction that I had, believing that it was real, but they're actually in bed, lucid dreaming, reliving the whole process of being, attacked by extraterrestrials in the house, but it never actually happens to them.
Mm.
The difference is they'll never be able to work out that it didn't happen to them.
Yeah.
That's how strong these astral thought forms are when people are asleep.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's a totally different aspect to look at that. Never really thought much on that at all. In that concept, that's quite amazing. So, how do you? So what would you recommend for people to sort of like, change their mindset to be able to? I don't know if you want to call them contacting them, or sort of trying to be able to like go into lucid dreaming, or even sort of like anything in that regard, to where they can sort of get a better understanding of them.
Well, we get people
in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the first sorts of questions we ask people when they're having these experiences they don't understand, they're literally sometimes tying themselves and their kids to the bed to stop themselves from being abducted, is to, you know, just stop and ask themselves, are they actually being harmed? Have they received any healing? You know, what's actually happening after these events? Yeah, we know it's absolutely beyond terrifying, and anyone who's experienced it will know what I'm saying when I say that. There are no words, but what's the actual end result? Have you actually been hurt in the process, or has actually something positive occurred afterwards?
Yeah.
And you know, that's generally our starting place with people, and most people will report that there's been nothing to report afterwards. There's no change, there's no harm, there might not necessarily be a positive effect, but there's certainly no negative effects other than their mental state, which obviously we then work with them. When people are able to just take a step back, we can then start to work with them to explain the sorts of things we're explaining to you, and then it can quite often lead to,
you see, it's not just one thing. This is the problem. People go, 1 + 1 = 2. Actually, it doesn't. Not in this stuff. We did a couple of videos on our YouTube channel where we actually talk about all the different phenomena that are occurring. It took us about 50 minutes to go through it all and explain to people, you may think it's this, but it's actually this, this, and this. Or you may think it's that over there, but it's actually not that at all. It's something else. And the first thing that a person needs to do is to understand what it is they're actually experiencing, and then they can work towards clarifying that whatever's going on around that contact, because it may not be contact, it could just be the phenomenon, and the phenomenon is known by a lot of people, but they don't understand. The phenomenon is like a holographic representation of your own consciousness, and it can reflect things back to you: orbs, lights, craft, anything you want to see.
Yeah, a lot of
so
people...
that's where evidence will come into a big play on that. As you were saying earlier, you have to write things down and make sure everything's
And we also say to people that they need to meditate, and people go, I don't want to meditate, I can't meditate. And I say to them, look, if you can get to a point where your mind is pretty calm at night when you're going to sleep, if anything happens, the chance of you actually remembering what's going on around you is quite high. Whereas if you've got a level of anxiety about being, a lot of people don't want to go to sleep at night. We get people, they've got recorders on all the time. They're videoing themselves. They've got footage of, things going on around them. And we say to them, look, your level of anxiety is so high, it's exponentially making everything worse, because if something small happens in your mind, it's really big, because you feel that, you're being taken, or you could be taken. And so we try to get people to step back from all of that and say, listen, stop recording, stop this, stop that, change the furniture around in the room, get out and ground, spend some time out in nature, and really start to think about what's important to you. And even just something that small, that sort of shift is enough sometimes to get people to go, I will start documenting what's going on, because I want to know. And there isn't a person I've met, and I've met hundreds of people, that hasn't wanted to work out what's going on. They all want to know. They don't want to just buy into the stories, the narrative, social media, or whatever the message is. They actually want to work out what's going on.
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, but when I go to sleep at night time, my brain doesn't really shut off. I just randomly start getting "Bird as the Word" from the Trash Man playing in my head. So I can't really concentrate when I'm trying to do some sort of form of meditation or something like that. But let's just put that little bit of a joke in
Yeah,
there.
but that's where it starts. It's if you're actually being taken, occasionally, you're going to want to try to work out a way to reduce your own stress and anxiety first, and have your brain in a deeper state, so that you can actually, when they come, you can work out what's going on instead of having a fight or flight reaction to what's taking place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, look, I'm a big believer on the whole meditation sort of stuff thing. I'll admit myself, I struggle a lot on trying to focus and trying to meditate, and I guess it's one of those things that you just got to keep trying to
But you can
break through that barrier.
But you can do a lot of good things though. See, there's induction techniques that you can teach yourself. It's not hypnotherapy. It's just you can do 3 or 4 things the same way every night before you go to sleep. And that becomes an induction methodology for you to then set yourself up for the sleep state. Things like, now I'm going to put my phone down and turn it off. And you're programming your mind to actually go into a much calmer state rather than sitting there staring at the laptop and the computer, whatever it is, and then hopping into bed, and then next thing you know, your brain's going a million miles an hour.
Yeah. I think that's probably the worst thing too. Technology is sort of taking away a lot of the whole spiritual concept that humans have the ability of. As amazing technology is, I sort of feel it is dragging us away a lot from the whole spiritual side of things. And
well, it's interesting you mention that, because with the what was the name of that Zimbabwe school? The aerial school phenomenon. When those kids, I'm not sure if you've ever heard them talking. The extraterrestrials told about 70 children, or a couple of them in particular, do not get technologied, and they made that word up, but it was pretty cute. But the thing is, what they meant by that is that don't allow your technology to take over your life.
Yeah, which makes sense, because you look at everyone's all stuck in their phones these days. Like, they're walking along, they're looking at their phones. They're not even watching where they're going, and there's things going on above us that we don't even see because people are too busy looking down at their phones or something, all that nature, or we're just too busy working as a working society. It's sort of a shame, because it's, as much as we want to try and bring out the reality that these things exist and these things are around, I think the biggest first step is to really acknowledge that they are out there, but then also to try and connect with them, obviously, in that sort of spiritual sense, if that makes sense. Because obviously, as you were saying, they're you mentioned before, they're a three-dimensional being, but they're also a multi-dimensional spiritual sort of aspects.
The older abductees, like myself, there was no phones. There was nothing, right? So, as a kid, your parents kicked you outside, said go and play. You'd be outside all day. You come home when the street lights came on, sort of thing. You had time to think. You had time to grow. Now you've got people walking around, very young people with technology all over them, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And what that's doing is disassociating them from the natural surroundings, the energy of nature, and all the things that cause people to be grounded.
Yeah, and I was going to say something. Now I was just lost me there because I started reading the comments. Because Kayla's mentioned there from the communication. So here's a question for you. From their communication, have they asked about religion? So I guess he's asking there, what sort of God do they sort of worship, or if they do even believe in religion, or?
So it depends which race you're talking about. The Zetas, they don't have any religion, because religion is a man-made construct. I mean, look, either two things that exist. It's so simple. Either a being exists or a consciousness exists in a multidimensional state, and it creates consciousness such as yourself. Or every single person that's listening to this podcast or on this planet, every person who's part of the human species is an accident. So it's either one or the other. It's not, and for the Zetas, it's more about going, well, we know that consciousness exists right across all of the universes. And so many races abide by that thinking. They don't worship the construct of consciousness. They understand it, whereas humans created a construct around it, and that's because of the Anunnaki. So a lot of people go, whoa, don't talk about the Anunnaki. But the thing is that there's a lot of information from the past, from ancient Sumerian stuff, isn't it? Yeah. And the cuneiform on the tablets and all the rest of it, that talks about what's taken place in the past. Now, I don't believe there's any information about the Anunnaki on any of those tablets.
Well, that's what the Sumerian called.
Oh, that's what the Sumerian called archaeologist. She's an archaeologist, so this is a good thing.
That's their work.
That's their work. So, the Anunnaki have probably got a different attitude towards deities and those sorts of things, but from their perspective, they say that they are the creators of the human species.
Yeah.
And so they would have wanted to create a construct whereby the human species would be fairly controlled by extraterrestrial races. It doesn't make them bad. I mean, most species have some sort of hierarchical governmental structure, for good or bad. So that's just that race. But there are other races, like the Zetas don't have a hierarchical structure at all, a governmental structure. They use specific races as a function, and to discuss that's going to take another half an hour, so I won't go into that. But generally, the thing is with these races is once you start to get in contact with them and it's clear, and you're no longer seeing yourself as an abductee or whatever, they start to tell you more about their information, and they'll try and give you succinct information so that any person that's actually having real contact will be able to talk about the societal structures, the political structures if they exist, what are the protocols that exist when meeting a race. And once you understand these sorts of protocols, and then you're able to actually interact with these beings on a much better level.
Yeah. So, obviously, they've also been around human civilization for a long time there. So do you think they would have had a connection in regards to ancient civilizations as well? Because obviously we mentioned, the ancient civilizations would have worshipped these as gods and such. Do you think Zetas would be in that sort of agenda as well, to be calling them gods?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the Anunnaki are quite prevalent in that kind of realm. The Zeta, well, certainly there are images of the greys in their generic form found throughout the world. Over here in the rock art, in the cave paintings in America, South America, Peru, and places like that. The Mayans, the Aztecs, they had depictions of grey-like entities in their rock carvings. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you look into the Nazca mummies, whether you believe or not, those are real extraterrestrial mummified bodies. But we do know that the Greys were around during human history. Whether or not they allowed themselves to be worshipped as gods, I don't know. It's not a question we've actually asked them. They would not want to be worshipped as a god, and I know they would probably go to every effort to make sure that didn't happen, but that wouldn't stop.
I think I would suggest that this species that is currently on planet now, human species, is about the 6th or 7th species that's existed across the history of the planet.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that these extraterrestrial races were here well before humans were even designed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we know certainly one race was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a pretty hard question in that regard then. So they've been around for a long time, and obviously they would have played a big part in our development as a human civilization in general. So what point do they sort of go, look, we're not going to be interfering them, just sort of letting them go, instead of introducing us to this technology that they have and sort of building us up? Because they reckon we've been around for 10,000 years or something as human beings, I suppose. That's a long time to be going and sitting around throwing sticks and rocks and whatever at each other. Like,
Yeah.
why would they wait so long in that time period and then just to go, look, righto, we're going to start throwing a bit of influence in there or something? I don't know. Like, I know it's a hard question, but what are your thoughts
It's
on
not
that?
really a hard question.
Well, we know they've been trying to help society grow for a very long time.
Yeah.
There's been a concerted effort within the last 3 generations.
It wasn't difficult while we were in the industrial era, the pre-industrial era, all these things. And then all of a sudden technology popped up. Next thing we got all these chips and computer boards and integrated circuitry and all this stuff. It just seemed to not magically appear, but it did appear. A lot of it's got to do with Tesla. That's the first thing. He's got 500 of his patents that were never actually allowed. The public were never allowed to see them. We've got to understand that there's timelines, and these timelines are not linear. But if you look in, say, well, maybe 23 years, 2045, Kurzweiler and these people have been talking about a singularity. Well, the Zetas have also said that there's going to be a massive singularity shift in 2045. And so we need to understand that just as the IoT, the Internet of Things, and all the sensor-driven technology that now exists, it's based on a process called what's called IPv6. And this is probably a bit technical for people, but if anybody is out there and they're an IT person, they'll understand what that IPv6 addressing system means. And it means that all technologies are able to wirelessly access a central internet process. That means that all technology is now linked together. And at some point, technology is going to, especially in conjunction with AI, be able to run the planet successfully, and humans are going to have a lot less to do. Now, the extraterrestrials are watching this take place. They're also seeing that there's the capacity for humans to develop technology and travel off planet. We know that Elon Musk is already talking about that anyway. And so from their perspective, they're going, hang on, these guys down here, they're about to, in the next 25, 30 years, take off and start coming towards our planet. We need to make sure that we, try to build some community spirit in with these people, that they don't bring their technology with them and cause us all these issues. So people sort of don't really think much about that, but think about where you've come from, since 1985, 1995 to now. It hasn't been much of a leap in years, and we've got all this technology, hypersonic technology, sensor-driven technology, all these sorts of things. So the extraterrestrials have a vested interest in making sure that when humans travel and start to move out of the solar system, they don't bring all their rubbish with them.
Yeah, which would probably be a hard thing to do because, as humans do, we're trash. Treat the way we treat the planet, basically. It's as horrible as it sounds, I know, but it's that's really. But I'm a firm believer, pretty sold on this, with regards to Roswell, starting us off with, I don't know if it's a deliberate crash or something like that, but it seems that our technology sort of boomed a lot faster from that point on. That's where we sort of started getting like the computer chips and microwaves and compact discs, and just the whole computer generation just sort of boomed from that point, and all we've done is just sort of improved from there on. So
we did a video on Roswell a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of months ago.
Oh, months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we asked the Zetas about Roswell and Trinity and the Corona Ranch and all those sorts of things, and they had a lot of interesting things to say. So people can watch that video if they want some more information.
Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely get you your channel there, and I'll put that into the description of the show here in the show notes and that. Because look, it's amazing where it's sort of gone. And it's sort of like my biggest thing is, why didn't they interfere sooner? Like, especially before like the world wars. Like where humans is like treating each other like shit. They just want to try and I don't know, be the best or dominate the world or whoever. Some idiot or the other countries there want to go and take over. Like, why would they not go and interfere?
Well, because the problem is that humans' perception of extraterrestrials is duality. It's either good or bad. And so the problem is that if it's not one race but multiple races, say there's 6 to 9 races that are interacting with humanity, there may be some of those races that don't care at all about your free will, and that they, like the reptilians and these sorts of races, they have a care factor of 0, whereas other races abide by the universal laws of free will. And so, even from a like a discussion perspective, you've got races that can't even agree with how they can interact with humanity. So that's why there's a problem. If it was just one race, at least you'd be able to deal with it. But when you think about all the different races, things like what's happening in Skinwalker, what's happening here, what's happening there, why is those beings doing this, and I know that a lot of it sounds completely crazy to some people, but you talk to enough people, you start to develop a picture of what's going on, and it sort of starts to make some sense after a while that it's not just one race, it's multiple races. So we can't expect us to say, well, why don't you guys all just step in and help us, when there's some races there that we're quite happy for all the problems to continue on the planet.
Yeah, I've heard like there's lots of different races out there. So like, what is their sort of interaction with these different races there? Are they sort of like a bit of a conflict, or are they just sort of I don't know, sit idly by and just let them go and do what they want to do over there, and we're going to do our thing over here? Or like, how does this sort of work together in a sense?
Okay, so with the hybrids, if you're from that point of origin, your race will be looking after you. That's how it works. So if you're not from a specific race, that race may not actually have the capacity to look after their hybrids. It's actually, I'm not sure if you've heard of the skull experiment. The skull experiment were in contact many years ago with a group called the Council of Nine, and we ended up getting contact with them as well, only to realise that the Council of Nine is a little bit dysfunctional. And so when we start to, all these preconceived concepts that we have about how extraterrestrials are so much higher than us and they must have everything under control, they actually don't. And so it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, because you'd like to think someone who's a lot more advanced than what we are have a lot more sense of control, wouldn't you? It's
the Zetas definitely do.
Scary.
The Zetas do. Sirius A, some the Arcturians, a completely different race. They're sort of not 3D or anything. There are other races. When you talk about frequency, vibration, consciousness, all the races fit into different levels of that. Some may, like interdimensional races, may not care at all about three-dimensional space. From their, perspective, it doesn't matter if people pass over because they've never experienced physicality at all. Whereas other beings, like the Zetas, they create containers. Now, a lot of people talk about the Greys and go, "Oh, they're just, genetically created sort of empty shells." But the thing is, what they don't realise is that the Zetas create those containers for themselves from their own genetic material, and they can body hop from their own body to their own genetically created container anytime that they want to. And so people go, "Oh, that sounds pretty crazy." Not really. You did it as a human. You incarnated into a body that was created for you by your mum and dad. And then when you're finished with it, you'll go back to where you came from. And then if you choose to incarnate again, you'll do the same process. The difference is that the Zetas and other races have got the process down to a finer degree. That's all.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy concept. Like, honestly, you're saying, like, it sounds pretty crazy, but it's like, because like obviously we're growing up and knowing that it's gonna be a mum and dad, and someone's gonna hate me for saying that, but sorry, that's the truth. But our natural biology starting from a child, like, where does that sort of come into play there? Like, why do they want to go in as a child and then grow up and then just to go and die again? Like, what's the purpose of that?
Well, that's because there's the underlying law of the universality is free will. So the races that abide by that, the only way that they can come in and create change is to come in through the process of being human. So they need to come in through the birthing process, and then generally what happens is to enliven the physical form, you need a soul or a spirit, and the spirit person, under contract with the extraterrestrial, creates symbiotic consciousness, and together they create the hybrid mind, which we call the local construct. And so they have to come through the process to abide by the underlying principle of free will for humans.
Yes.
And once they do that, then they're able to come through and affect and support. Even though it's a tough gig, you know yourself, it's not easy being human, and it's a tough gig, but they do it anyway. They didn't have to, but in the future, when they can see what's coming down the timeline at them, they're making a pretty big effort to avoid some of the current situations that are taking place on planet.
Yeah. So what about in regards to like the obviously they got their own memories from their what do you call it, from their side of things, and then coming into a human form. What about like the whole experience there and memories that come and follow through with that? Like what's happening there? Do they still keep the memories, or is it sort of get half wiped away, or what's the story there, you think?
So when you come in from spirit realm and you incarnate into the human form, any lives that you had generally are blocked from you through the Schumann frequency. But there are 3,000 documented cases, that's my understanding, where people are able to remember their past lives, right? So that whole screen memory process didn't work. Some people get shards of information from their previous lives as extraterrestrials, and other people don't remember at all. But it depends on you as a person as to what you will grow into as an individual, and what you'll then understand then about yourself. So, some of this stuff takes a bit of work to do, like shamanic work, shadow work, meditation processes, where people would then start to think about their greater nature, their greater consciousness.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. I'm just getting a question here from Aries. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name there. He's sort of saying he's Arcturian in origin. Can you tell me what that means, other than beings from the actual location, please?
Well, the Arcturians actually don't come from Arcturus, because Arcturus is actually a star. It's like it's actually so. But they've told us that they associate with that constellation, the Buddhist constellation, because from their perspective, it's easier to give a geographical location out there so people can understand that. When people talk about who they are, well, of course, they're the higher self, aren't they?
Yeah. We did a whole show the other day,
on the Arcturians.
About the Arcturians. So, follow that YouTube.
I know we keep saying to people, just go and read this, watch this video.
So much information.
But we've got like 70, 80 videos on there, and a lot of the questions you're asking can be answered by those videos. So,
That's awesome. Look, I'll definitely go and throw people that way there so they can try and, if they have these questions for themselves, they can find that information by all means. So I do have another question here from Caleb there. His question here: are we the only race that live on Earth, or have they, the Greys, indicated that we share with other alien races that stay hidden underground? Or have you talked about Antarctica at all? So obviously Antarctica is a big thing at the moment there, where it could have been something that's frozen over. But obviously the question is there, are we sharing these areas with other races?
Okay, firstly, humans don't own this planet. It's just a floating sphere in space. There's hundreds of thousands of habitable planets, and a lot of races do live in cavernous environments as well, underground. Yes, of course, there would be beings at some point that can live underground, USOs, underwater submersible objects. There's a lot of craft that are traveling under the oceans. In regards to Antarctica, I'll just say that's really interesting.
There's a lot of things going on. I was a bit skeptical at first. I hate the word skeptical, but I was a bit hesitant to really sort of like think, Antarctica of all places to go and hide in. It's like when you think about it, it's like it's actually a pretty good spot to go and hide, let alone like the ocean itself.
I
There's a lot of
would
places to go and hide down there.
suggest that nobody's hiding at all. I would suggest that it's a known place.
Oh, definitely, but come from a public perspective, there, like it's hidden to the general public.
Well, you and I won't be going there tomorrow. It's just too cold anyway. But
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like if you want to have a place where no one's going to go, stick it in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Save it.
Definitely. Now, so you mentioned a lot of races, different, like, was it 62 races? 62 or 63, I think, races?
63 races of the Zetas or the grey species, yes.
Yeah. So, okay, describe the different races to me there. Is it sort of like humans, like, go between, like, the Asians to the Africans, sort of same concept?
Yeah. Well, okay, so the races, they are not really genetically different. That's the first thing. But they exist in function. So, and you'll have to help me out with this list. I definitely can't recite 63 races.
We don't know
because we don't know them. We've only had access to eight. Syann says 8 of the different grey races.
Yeah.
One of them is the ethical race.
Yeah, they seem to.
The biological race, the technical race,
the scientists,
the scientific race. So the thing is, think about how we have a top-down governmental system. They don't. They have a flat model. It's linear, and so you only bring in the race for a specific function that needs to be performed. So the races compartmentalize what takes place on planet or planets for them, depending on what function they're performing.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sort of getting a bit like a hive mind sort of mentality on that. Like,
Absolutely,
you got the worker ants, you got the soldier ants, and sort of stuff like that. That sort of general concept. Like that sounds pretty cool. Actually, it's probably a clever way to do it because then you're obviously picking the.
Well, there's a reason why. So I'm not sure if you know, but a few years ago, technology was developed that you could monitor resources on planet Earth, and like water usage, and how many bananas will be grown in a certain crop, these sorts of things. Well, the Zetas developed this technology thousands and thousands of years ago, and in doing so, they've been able to make sure that each being on the planet is allocated the resources, renewable resources, for each of the entities on that planet. That means that they're able to maintain a status quo with the physical planets that they exist on using technology. And now we're starting as humans to develop the same technology so that we can also start to look at the resource usage in regards to what people actually use on a daily basis. But this stuff's it's based in AI and it's future stuff that's coming down the pipeline. So
we're sort of getting on the concept of quantum technology there. We're not far from that, as from my understanding, and I think that's where it's definitely going to start branching out. And as you mentioned, like the whole computing world is just going to take over and just control the whole world in that sense. Before we know, we might get a whole Skynet situation happening.
I would suggest it's actually going to go well past that. Like, we've got to understand that AI and technology, they will create. It will find its own balance. It will find its own level. Once it does, it'll then start to create replications of itself. And once it's able, basically that's not hard for it to do. Once it's able to self-replicate, the Zetas have already talked about what's called IA and inanimate animates. And the inanimate animates are the opposite of AI. It's actually technology that has consciousness. It's not it's not software pretending or representing itself as having some level of sentience or consciousness. It's the opposite. It's actually it's self-aware, and it's well past being self-aware in regards to its ability to make decisions about its own life. It's very interesting discussion that we've had with the Zetas about that.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool because I'm sort of bit scared on the concept, like I mentioned before, a Skynet situation where AI takes over the world and might potentially wipe out the human race because they see us as the initial threat to the planet or something like that. But who knows? I guess hopefully the Zetas or any other sort of ET beings will sort of come in and sort of save us in that regard. But I do have another one here. Aries, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. There's a theory that the Greys are humans from the future. Is there any truth? I understand linear time is a human construct.
No, we know we know that a lot of people say that, but that's because that's what they want to believe. The Greys actually genetically modified, basically came from a plant species, and because of their nucleotide sequences and genetic structure, they have been able to manipulate their genetic structures. We know now that the CRISPR technology exists for human species. Hopefully you guys have heard of that. And CRISPR is used to change sequences. That's very rudimentary technology for the Zetas, though they're not humans in the future. And to be honest, God help us if they were.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about, you mentioned there's been 6 civilizations prior to ours in regards to Earth's history. So I'd love to get you on with Triffin and Grubb there to go and talk about the whole concept of ancient civilizations, because that's their forte. So if you're interested to go, and I'll get you connected with them, because great chat. I've had them on the show here a few times there, and we're talking about the whole concepts. So in regards to my question there with the, people will refer to them as UTs, ultra-terrestrials, how you want to pronounce it. So what sort of concept, or where have they come through in our history then to be in regards to these ETs, or amongst the ETs, I should say?
Are you talking about hyperversals?
No, ultra-terrestrial. I don't think we really know what ultra-terrestrial
Can you
means.
explain what that word, what your concept is?
So it seems to be everyone seems to be referring to them like the prior civilizations to us. So they're calling them ultra-terrestrials. And obviously something's happened to them in the past. Where have they gone? I don't know. They could be. They're just sort of referring to them as they could be the possible ETs that are flying around us. And,
yeah.
Okay.
So where are they in regards to the surrounding ETs today?
Well, the thing is, if you talk about terrestrials, you talking about terrestrial humans that lived in the past, or you're talking about extraterrestrials that lived on planet that are now called ultra-terrestrials because they're no longer here anymore. If that's what is that what you're talking about?
Yes, referring similar to something like
Yeah. So yes, and a lot of that's got to do with Atlantis, and I don't buy into Atlantis and all the rest of it, but we did have a situation where we were talking to a being once, and they said, look, there'll never be a point where people are put together as they were in Atlantis, because once they started to use different species for technological development, genetic development, the extraterrestrials realized that there were some races that couldn't be trusted. And so the reason for that, we have individuated contact, and what people are calling abduction, is because the extraterrestrials will not put all of the civilizations in one place and then empower those civilizations with the technological information from those races. Whereas you'll find there's people coming forward that have specific information about specific races, but it's not isolated to them. They'll be given information across a wide range of people, because the races no longer wish to, having learnt from the past and the mistakes that were made in the past, have all the information in the hands of a few.
Yeah, that's sort of been one of my biggest questions. Like, these races or, humans in the past there who might have outlived any cataclysms and such like. It's like you'd think they'd learn from previous mistakes and sort of go, righto, this is how we're supposed to live now. That's my sort of understanding on a proper ultra-terrestrial, at least an ancient civilization who survives today. That's my understanding. Like, there should be at least interacting with our today's civilization. You're doing things wrong now, and fix it, don't do this. So that's where I sort of feel like interactions should have been made at least prior to World War I or World War II before they started nuking each other. That's my sort of concept and my sort of personal opinion on that.
It doesn't take much intelligence to know that people shouldn't be starving, and that there shouldn't be anybody homeless. There's enough resources for everybody. So the problem isn't the human species. The problem is individuals.
Yeah. Again, that's where I sort of want to refer back to, that's where I feel like an interaction of some sort going, hey, look, you're doing this all wrong. You should be all working together. You shouldn't be individualizing everyone. Every country should be all working together, and I'm not sure if you've heard, I've mentioned this myself, for humans to work together, there sort of needs to be a common goal. And a sad way of putting it is, an alien invasion will bring us all united together and actually start working together to go and, become one. Because we're all under the one sort of banner or flag or whatever you want to call it, because, we're all working together.
It's not going to happen. And although people are currently talking about disclosure, there's two types of disclosure. There's the disclosure that that people are being given, and then there's the disclosure that the extraterrestrials will do when they're ready, and they're not ready. They're nowhere near ready. And so humans will spend the next whatever years arguing over what disclosure is, whether that's a UAP, whether that's an orb, whether whatever. And the extraterrestrials will just sit back and go, we don't care what you say, because we need to see you basically mature as a race. And until you mature as a race, you will not be allowed to leave your solar system and travel into the outer reaches and through cause and effect affect other races.
Yeah, but I guess it's one of those things we're just going to try and figure out over time. And unfortunately, I also feel like we're going to be imminent for a World War III at some point there, the way the world's going at this point. And it's like how many wars do we sort of need to go through before they actually want to go and say, look, enough's enough? I know it's a tough question, but it's
I know what it looks like. I know what it looks like, but it's not. So I know what it looks like. I think people should stop fearing what they think's going to take place.
Yeah, honestly, look, people should just be embracing love and happiness and, being good to each other. That's all we sort of really need around the world, keep that sort of thing, that vibe going around, and then, things will be fine and dandy in that sort of concept. Obviously, that's wishful thinking in an ideal world, an ideal world, I should say. But, it's needed. But I do have a couple more questions here before we finish up.
Okay.
Shaman? I'm going to say Shaman. Sorry, I'm getting horrible with these names here. I'm not sure what to call you these days. Let's call you people. So anyway, Shaman's, you were saying if you are a particular species and require help, your species looks after you if you incarnate as a human. Is there any way we could find out what species we are?
Yeah. So look, we do what's called point of origin work with people. Yeah. And people should, if they want to look on our website, they can see that we do that. You can go to a psychic and find out, and whether you find that information believable or not, it's up to you. We work with a lot of different people. Yeah. We spend a lot of time helping people to understand who they are, and we take it very seriously as well. So
yeah. And Shaman's asked again, how are we chosen to be a contact or make contact?
Sorry, who was chosen?
How are we chosen?
Shaman again. Shaman. How are we be a contact or contact?
So how are people chosen for contact? Is that what the question is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
You're not chosen for contact. There's no such thing as choice. It's who you are before you incarnate into the human form. Your parents are visiting you. That's all it comes down to. You just don't remember who they are.
Yeah, and that's fair enough too. And I was going to ask you, one of the quick questions too, obviously this is something you're experiencing, both you, And as the question was asked before we started the show here, like, so your family members, like, have they been getting experiences as well in this regard, or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, a lot of contact's generational. When you ask a person, as we said, we work with a lot of people. When you ask people about their contact, we actually can get to speak to their parents, and we find out that the parents, because of the screen memory technology they have embedded with them, they don't remember the contact. But if you know the right questions to ask, you can easily peel away those screen memories, and they realise they've actually had contact their whole life. Not all the time, but with the right questions, you can find out.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I'll definitely going to throw people to your way there to try and sort of get a better understanding on what they want to try and get answers for. Because obviously we're not going to be able to cover everyone's answers tonight, but definitely look at getting his back on there at some point, and maybe next week there, and try and continue on, and hopefully some people bring some more questions forward, and we'll try and cover those. Or even if you want to try and bring up your own your most common questions, your frequently asked questions, and sort of work through that. Even like we'll work something out anyway. So try and get the information out.
We've had so many people come on to the show at the Zeta Connection on YouTube, and we get them to ask the questions that people ask them, so that we can try and help as many people as possible. Because, like your show, this information goes out, people listen to what they learn. I've mentioned about 30 different categories of information today, and hopefully people will go, well, okay, so there is a way to work through this, and if I do it carefully, I'll actually get some decent answers. And that's really all that matters.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, that's awesome, because look, we're all here to try and sort of work out the same thing, get some sort of disclosure happening, realization things are happening out there, and it's one of those, get rid of this damn stigma that's still attached to this whole topic. That's my biggest thing. And like, I know everything, people say they're seeing things out there all the time there. It's like not everything is a UFO or in that regard, but at least everyone's open to the whole concept, which is a good thing in that regard.
It takes a while, and I mean, it's a big planet, and there's a lot of people on it, and not everybody's being contacted, so not that they're aware of. And because of that, for them, it's not really in the upper level of their mind, And when they hear people talking about it, it's too fantastical for them. But for people that are actually having contact, that's clear contact. It's okay. You don't need for people to agree with you, because that's your own level of contact that you've got for yourself.
Yeah, that's right. And that's one of the biggest things I sort of try to press as well. People are explaining their experiences, their encounters that they're having. And so who are you to sort of judge them on their experiences there? Because you're not the one who's sitting next to them experiencing the same thing. You can't question that.
So we do that as well. We say to people, not sure, what you're experiencing or how you're experiencing it, but we do like to help people try to categorize their experiences, because it gives people a sense of compartmentalization. Because the last thing you want is for you to believe that your life's a mess, especially from extraterrestrial contact. And so a lot of times we talk to people, we go, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about that spirit contact as not being extraterrestrial contact? Because if everybody automatically just abdicates responsibility to extraterrestrial contact, we all completely miss the point that everything is consciousness. And so this is why we put those free books out for people, so that they can read through them, have a look at some of the information, maybe get some depth to the conversation as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I have one quick question here before we do finish up. So Jane's asking here, did they create the other types of humans we've have here? Hang on. Did they create the other type? They create the other types of humans where we've had here, like the elongated skulls and the giant race of humans in this planet?
I don't know too much about these supposed giant race skeletons that have been found, but what we definitely do know from what we've been told is that being an archaeologist, there's lots of different there was supposedly lots of different stages of human evolution, a homo this, a homo that, homo erectus, habilis, and all of the different early hominid forms. we've been told that rather than them being a sequential, or more or less sequential evolution leading to modern man, or Homo sapiens sapien, that were actually the result of lots of different experimentation by different races. So, we know that about that. So if these giant skeletons are real, I mean, I've not seen one, so I don't know. And the elongated skulls, we know of them, but are they real? I don't know. But let's pretend that they are definitely real. Then I would suggest probably it's something along the same lines.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, look, we're going to have to finish up there, guys. Look, where can people sort of find you or contact you? Give yourselves a bit of a blog there.
Yeah, so we'd like people to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Zeta Connection, and there's a lot of videos on there, lots of information. We actually teach off that one as well. We've got our own educational portal, so we teach mediumship, extraterrestrial contact, lots of different things on that site. That can also be found. We've got a website called the-zeta-connection.com.
And everything links.
And everything on that website links to everything we do. We try and help as many people as we can, but it can be a bit difficult when there are lots and lots and lots of people. So we just do the best that we can, and we generally point people to our videos and just do what we can with people.
No, that's awesome. Look, guys, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. Absolutely wonderful chat. It's absolutely mind-opening to what's actually going on, so you don't really get a bit of a grasp on what connections you can have with the different races out there, and in particular the Zetas. So it's definitely an interesting one. So thank you again so much for coming on and informing us about the reality of what's out there, It's great.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, thank you very much, guys. And I'll leave us there, and I'll get you back to you in a minute. All right, there we go. All right, I'll push these buttons here. And look, guys, thanks for coming on the show tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the show. It was absolutely fantastic having you all here. And big thank you there to Paul and Syann for coming on tonight. Thanks to everyone there coming through on the chat here and asking questions there. Absolutely awesome having your questions there. And sorry if I got your name wrong, especially Aries there. I thought your name might have been Aries, but just having a guess, But yeah, so look, guys, thanks to everyone there, all the everyone, got M, got Aaron joining in there, Caleb, throwing a few in there. Colleen, thanks for coming back on again the show tonight. Just going through the names here. Jane, good to see you again coming on as well. And look, Shannon as well. Thanks for coming in. And look, guys, everyone that's basically joining on the show tonight. Actually, absolutely appreciate it. So yeah, guys, don't forget, please share the show with your friends and family, the podcast. Even join the YouTube channel, because this will be on the YouTube channel as well. So be sure to subscribe to that one as well. Check out the online store. Get some merch there. Help support the show. There, just a bit of bragging rights to go check out what else can do. So nothing too special, but it's just a cool concept. And also, don't forget, we do have the event happening at the end of this month here. So check out the event at the end of the show. Not the end of the show, the end of the month. It's in the Facebook page. Jeez, I'm losing myself here. What am I doing? And also, we've got the giveaway there for the Fred Valentich experience there with George Simpson's there. So go and find that there, guys, and go and share that around. Try and get the farmer, basically. So look, I'm going to shut up now because I'm losing myself here, and I'm going to leave you to it. And all the best, guys, and I'll see you on the next live stream. So all the best, guys. See you next time. Catch you later. I'm going to push this button here, and I'm going to nick off. And see you. Bye.